order. As you can see, this meeting is being held in person, and it can also be viewed on local cable channel 1303 or on the internet by accessing bucksportmaine.gov and selecting agendas and minutes and choosing this meeting and clicking on the video button next to the meeting. Questions or comments may be submitted during the meeting by emailing us at bucksportmaine.gov or during the meeting by calling 307-8030. Two reminders, please. This would be a great time to make sure your cell phones are silent or off, whatever makes them not make noise. And also, if you do intend to speak this evening, I will ask you to come to the podium and state your name for the folks at home. And I will interrupt you if you speak from your chair. Just that's how it has to be. And roll call. George.
Councilor Mark Eastman.
Here.
Councilor Paul Govan.
Here.
Councilor Tracy Hare.
Here.
Mayor Paul Bissonnette.
Here.
Councilor Dan Holmesby.
Here.
Deputy Mayor Steve Bishop.
Here.
Councilor Ed Rankin.
Here. Thank you, sir. Next is the minutes of our previous meeting. We have the minutes to review from October 10th, our regular meeting. I'll assume everyone's had a chance to review those.
Motion to approve. Second.
Questions? All those in favor? Thank you. Next, we do have correspondence, just the Verona police call on October the 12th. Any questions there? Thank you. We do not have any ordinances to consider or introduce this evening. We do have several discussion items, however. The first is a notice of intent to file landfill closure plan from Bucksport Mill LLC.
I'm happy to report that we received our formal notification of Bucksport Mill LLC's intent to file a closure plan for the landfill. That plan is due to be filed with the department by November 1st. I reached out to Karen Canuti today to ask if she anticipates that that will be filed on time. They have submitted some information and they've had some back and forth, but she anticipates that the closure plan will be filed on November 1st. That starts a whole process of review and the town will have the opportunity to provide input, etc. But I am encouraged that they are going to be on track to get that filed. This is not the end of any road, but it is a better place than we might have been a little while ago. So that's where we are with that one.
Great. Any questions? Tell me. Next is an update from the Infrastructure Committee meeting from earlier this evening.
Yeah, we met and discussed altering the police schedule in an effort to for employee retention and made a recommendation to the council to make that move.
So we will, I'll certainly open it up for discussion, but just we will need to vote, have a vote to let the town manager, to just say yes or nay to the town manager signing that MOU. But any discussion from the council on that? I know we're all here for the committee meeting, but.
So moved. Second.
Anything else? Questions from the public? Comment? Hearing none.
Because the only thing I'd add is it doesn't change the budget.
Right. There's no change
And it
to
doesn't change the
Coverage.
coverage.
Improves it, actually.
It improves coverage.
Just give me 2 minutes, and I promise Councilor Rankin it won't be more than that. I can give a blip to anybody who's set your watch.
Go.
Our current schedule doesn't move. People are, if you're on Thursday, Friday, Saturdays, Sunday nights, that's where you are for your life until somebody else gets hired and you might get off that shift. It doesn't rotate, it doesn't move. We've lost 5 people in the last 3 years, excuse me, at a cost of over $200,000 in training to replace. So this schedule will rotate 1 day every week, which will allow every shift to have 2 weekends off a month, and part of that is 4 days in a row off. The union approved it. We now are staffed at a point where we can finally implement a schedule change. And in order to keep all the good people that we now have on, the council has determined that this would be a good idea. But that was it. The schedule now moves. The shift doesn't, they don't go from morning to night to, it just, the shift they're in slides a day, every week.
Do you have a motion in a second? Any additional commentary? All's in favor? Opposed? Next is an update from the Services Committee.
We have a recommendation for appointments to the Conservation Commission appointment. Chris Johnson and Susan DeFilipps.
We will take that up in a little bit. Thank you. And next, what is becoming the most fun to call out is the dam update.
On October 18th, Bucksport Mill LLC filed a new petition with the DEP to relinquish ownership of Silver Lake, Alamoosic, and Toddy dams. The department has issued a letter of deficiency for the filing, and they have until November 2nd to provide the information that's been requested. There are significant differences in this application as to what was received before. The most glaring is that in the first petition, Silver Lake Dam was listed as owned by Bucksport Mill LLC, which is accurate. We have tax records that document that. And Toddy and Alamoosic were listed as owned by AIM Demolition USA LLC, which also was accurate at the time that was filed in June or July when they filed it, according to the tax records for the town of Orland. This filing lists all three dams under single ownership of Bucksport Mill LLC. There's no record in the registry of any transactions, and that's one of the questions that DEP has asked them about, is how this title moved from one to another. The other thing that's in that notice that is not accurate is that there is no public meeting at the Orland Community Center on Monday at 5 p.m. There is not, because they had not secured the facility before they sent out the notice. So there are 1,000+ notices out there with telling people that there's a meeting Monday night at 5 o'clock at the Orland Community Center, and there isn't. They will be sending out a new notice for another or some location at a yet to be determined date. We posted on Facebook. We've encouraged people to share. I sent it out to the media. The Bangor Daily News posted it on in their information today. We had people who were flying in from across the country who have business interests here to attend that meeting. Unfortunately, I had conversations and they were talking about making plain suspicious, and I said, don't do that. Nobody's going to be there if you do. So we have a list of things we see as deficiencies in the application that we will be submitting to the DEP prior to that November 2nd deadline. But there is a clock ticking according to the law that within 60 days of when we received it, which was the 21st, we have to hold a public meeting to discuss the topic of the dams in terms of potential ownership. There doesn't have to be a decision. And given the very little amount of information that we have, the meeting would likely result in a request to the DEP for an extension of 180 days for that. We have also submitted to the company a copy of our ordinance with a request for a time schedule that they plan on complying with our local review ordinance for transfer of dams. Their attorney has informed us that she would forward that to the company. I have not heard since then. And so, that's where we are right this minute. The 5 communities and 2 lake associations that have been meeting met again yesterday. And the other 4 communities are also submitting information to the DEP, citing the deficiencies in the petition and encouraging the department to reject it because of those deficiencies. So that's where we are at the moment with dams. JIRA, Bucksport Generation, has been very good working with the community. They have strong interest in what happens with the water there, since it's necessary for their operation, and they have contractual agreements with Bucksport Mill to provide those. So it's taking up a lot of time, but I think we're positioned as well as we can right now to make arguments about the sufficiency of the petition that was submitted. I have significant concerns about all of these eggs now being in one basket. I'm moving it from AIM Demolition USA, LLC, all under the umbrella of Bucksport Mill LLC, because Bucksport Mill LLC owns a dam and a land. And so, unless it's an error, which
I was gonna ask that.
it could be a
what-
mistake.
What's your biggest concern with that piece? What's your biggest worry there? Does that position them stronger against what they're trying to do, or do you think?
They don't have any assets.
AIM does.
AIM does.
Oh, okay, interesting.
AIM's not going away.
Yeah.
Bucksport Mill LLC is.
So, this is all up in the air. I don't know. Maybe it was an error in the application and it's
Yeah.
really still in, because there's nothing in the registry that says it's changed. But it's
Hmm.
it's one of the, we're working on finding out what it is
Right.
kind of things. But the other towns are committed to trying to slow down this train that seems to be approaching.
What's the best case scenario here? Like, all said and done, like, what's the best case scenario? Where do we end up? Because I guess I've been thinking about that.
The best case scenario is that they can't just walk away and leave 2 towns in hock
Yeah.
or something, because they have divested themselves of all the assets into an LLC that can just, that's the best.
Mhm.
I think that, in the long run, in the best interest of, are there things that could eventually be set up in a partnership kind of arrangement that includes an entity that needs the water, 2 entities that needs the water?
Mhm.
It would look different for the Orland situation, because those 2 dams are completely different than Silver Lake's dam is, but, I don't know what the end looks like, because I don't have enough information about anything
Mm.
to know condition or cost or anything, which is why in asking for the information that we've asked for, we had submitted the long list of questions to the department the first round. Well, they sent it to them, to Bucksport Mill, before they submitted this petition, and they didn't answer all those questions. It's this isn't an attempt to be obstructive. This is an attempt to protect the interests of the communities in the, best way that we can, so.
Yeah. I mean, Orland's tax base is, it would be devastating.
Mm-hmm. It would be. So that's the dam update right now, and by November 2nd, I will know if the petition was accepted, and if the petition was accepted, then we will be scheduling a meeting to discuss within that 60-day period, and given what we know right now, which is virtually nothing, we would have to ask for an extension to have time to know more. But our own ordinance is in there, and our own ordinance asks for a whole lot more and requires a financial guarantee and a whole bunch of other things that are
Anything else from the
a
council?
lot more interesting than the state regulation, shall we say.
Anything else from the council? Anything from the public? Here.
Peter Fitzgerald, resident of Bucksport. Does Orland have an ordinance similar to Bucksport that's relevant to the transfer of title?
They have a moratorium at this, because they're a town meeting instead of a town council, they have to go through town meeting process in order to adopt an ordinance. And they went through that process to adopt the moratorium ordinance, and they have a 180-day moratorium on. So their moratorium should cover they would not be able to do that for 180 days under the terms of the ordinance, because in that 180 days, Orland has to come up with an ordinance similar to, ours is more specific to Silver Lake, because the situations with Silver Lake, the contracts and stuff are different, but they are working on a similar ordinance.
So the moratorium was put in place at about the same time as Bucksport did?
The moratorium was put in place at the time that Bucksport adopted the ordinance. We had already done the moratorium. They had a longer, the following week. They have a longer process to go through, and town meeting is required, so. As opposed to the council, which can have a first reading, a second reading, a public hearing, and do it themselves. Orland is a selectman form, it's different. But they're in the same process that we were.
Anything else? All right. Thank you, Sue. Next, we have a little more than a handful of agenda items. The first is Resolve 2025-20 to approve replacement of the gas diesel system at the town garage.
Motion approved. Second.
I had a question on that.
Please do.
The, it says 20,000 transactions. What happens after that?
It says,
Right there.
it's 14,874.88.
No.
Right there.
It says 20,000 transactions, I think is what it says. Is there, I just wanna know, is there an extra fee after that? Are we kicked out? We gotta buy it again? What happens?
I think it resets at 20,000, I will have to, I haven't checked on that, but that, I don't know if it counts more or if it resets at that at whatever that number is. I don't know the answer.
What's the pattern of transactions typically in a year, do we know?
I don't know, but I think 20,000 would happen
Quickly?
fairly quick.
Yeah, it would be a couple of years probably. It would.
I'm sure it's fine, I'm just curious, does that is that it? It's 20,000 and it's like the system, do we need a new system, or do we have to?
No, I'm sure we don't need a new system. I'm sure if there was anything, we'd have to up the number of transactions that were, if that's what that is, and I don't know. If you wanna wait on this one and I'll check on it, we can vote on it at the next meeting, I'm good with that. We're not gonna install it next Tuesday anyway, it's just, that the one we have right now is the company's out of business. If it goes down, we don't have anything.
Well, is that, that's based on an annual number, 20,000 transactions annually?
Yeah, I don't know, it doesn't say that.
Because what I'm getting at is, in the event, there were 40 transactions in a day between
Right.
police cruisers, fire trucks, snowstorm with town garage vehicles and buses. If there were 40 transactions in a day, which in my opinion would be an extremely oddball busy day, and that took place 365 days a year, that would be 14,600 transactions. So we would still be all set, because you know that doesn't happen every day.
Right,
That's kind of what I was thinking about, if it's a yearly,
Right,
yeah.
but it doesn't say that.
yeah.
Right.
We could table it and get an answer.
You can table it, I'm happy to check that out, that's a good catch, I would,
I'm in support of it, but
can
I'd like
answer.
to know what that is.
Yeah.
let me just move it to the next
Yep.
agenda and get the answer to that question.
We did have a motion in a second, though.
I withdraw my motion.
Who seconded it? Paul?
I'll withdraw my second.
Thank you. Thank you, all right. Resolve 2025-21 to approve the contract with TextMyGov for community messaging.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Motion in a second, questions? Comment? All those in favor? Opposed? Resolve 2025-22 to approve certificate of, did you want to say something on the previous one?
I wanted to say that they upped the number of messages from 50 to 75,000 for the same price.
Oh,
Perfect.
Wonderful.
even better. I'm glad I stopped myself.
Well, no, we
Good update.
talked, again, because it's 3,000, should be about 3,000 every time we send one, so 75,000 works better than 50.
Resolve 2025-22 to approve certificate of commitment for sewer from July 1st of 2024, September 30th of 2024.
Motion to approve.
Second?
Motion second. Questions? Those in favor? Opposed? Resolve 2025-23 to approve the use of remaining ARPA funds for Ian's Playground.
Motion approved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Questions, comments?
This is, since we didn't get the grant that was applied for, what this does is ties up the rest of the ARPA funds that needed to be dedicated by the end of '24. They have to be spent by '26, but they have to be identified by the end of '24. So this, even though they haven't, done the bids and all that kind of stuff, what it says is the remaining ARPA funds will fund that project. That, I just wanted to be clear that we don't have bids, we don't have any of that kind of stuff. The playground committee just asked that those funds be dedicated to that project so that we can have the playground in 2020.
Great. Any additional comments?
And that's Rich's project, and he's here somewhere.
There he is.
Someone's having problems.
Just like magic.
Someone's, sorry, my apologies, someone's having problems with the video and I'm walking them through. ARPA funds?
Playground.
Yes.
Playground.
Oh, it's playground. Can I have $210,000, please? No. So, on behalf of the playground committee, applied for the LWCF monies through the Department of Agriculture, Conservation and Forestry. Very competitive round, and kind of had an incomplete document application. One of the departments at the state sent back their letter of approval 4 months after the deadline. It came in about a week and a half ago, and the deadline was June 30th. So they apologized, and luckily I found it was sitting in my spam. But if we do apply, in those same areas, those letters carry over. You just need to have them. So, had we gotten the funding, the playground wouldn't have been able to have been constructed until, the funds wouldn't have been released till 2026. So, ARPA funds need to be allocated, not spent, but allocated prior to the end of this year. without seeing any other items that fit underneath the needs, instead of sending those funds back to the federal government, I thought what better way than to go and fix the playground for the youth of the community.
How much is left in that?
$124,000.
How much?
$124,000.
Oh,
I thought
okay,
it was,
I was given wrong figures.
I thought it was, yeah.
Yeah, I was told 210.
210.
Yeah, that's what it was
Yeah,
on.
Rachel gave us 210. Okay, so 124. Okay.
That
It's-
didn't take into
it
account
says-
what went into this year's, the rest of the expenditures from last year that have been obligated but not expended.
Okay.
Okay. Yeah, it says-
124 will be a good start.
That changes things significantly.
yeah,
That
it's-
changes things significantly. We can have a slide in the swing. You know, we'll work hard. But
We'll
it's a
figure
good it's a good start, and it's, again, at least it's not all coming, at least it's not coming out of the tax base at this point, right?
Either way, I mean, tonight you're just looking for allocation of ARPA.
Correct.
If the project is still 200, then we have to talk at that time with quotes of,
Correct, because the other thing we figured out at the end was that Public Works has the means and capability of taking out the existing playground and disposing of it, and so that will save us there, but there are no means for them to construct the playground, so we will have to pay construction costs. But they can take out the footers and the equipment that's there. About $124,000 would be a great start for the playground, especially if you've been on Facebook seeing the comments lately.
Yeah, the
Lately,
community wants a
all summer.
playground.
All summer.
Yeah. Or needs a playground, I
Needs a
should say,
playground.
needs a playground.
We've got some good cameras that are keeping an eye on everything now, so. Thank you.
Absolutely. We do have a motion in a second. Any other comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Next is Resolve 2025-24 to approve acceptance of a GAG burn grant in the amount of $1,500.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Or
Question?
accept?
I have a question. I'm for this, I'm just curious, what's special about this handheld radio? Cause we have repeaters and things, what's the difference?
These funds are going to portable radios that go for each officer. So it'll be assigned to, we have a vacancy, and when we fill that vacancy, we need a portable radio for that officer. And this funding will buy that without having to purchase it through our.
So it's the same radio like we have now with our repeater system and all that?
Yes, it's just the newer version, which is more expensive. At the current price is almost exactly what the grant is. It's like $7 off, so.
I just wasn't sure if this was like something that's replacing an old system, or if this is an add-on.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Any other questions? Do we have a motion in a second?
I thought we did.
We do, yeah, we do, that's right, yeah. All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. And I believe the last resolve of the evening is 2025-25 to approve acceptance of an MMA risk reduction grant in the amount of $1,502.41.
Motion to approve?
Second.
Motion second. Questions, comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Let's see, resignations, appointments, assignments, and elections. We have two that were discussed earlier this evening to the Conservation Commission. Chris Johnson and Suzanne DePhillips. How would the council like to proceed?
Motion to approve?
Second.
Questions or comments? All those in favor? Opposed? Thank you. Approval of quitclaims, discharges, and deeds. We have one this evening for Stephen A. Doucette, map 008, lot 047, tax lien discharge from June the 16th of 2022.
Motion approved.
Second.
Questions? All those in favor? Opposed? I'm letting you find that before I say town manager's report.
Yeah, well, that's okay, the town manager can't sign that one. So, I might as well, I lied. No, I've got my own thing, I was looking for the Doucette thing, so you could sign that.
Oh.
Otherwise, I have to call you and say, please come to the office.
Town managers report.
Okay, thank you. First, I'm gonna read a press release that I'm issuing in regard to a grant that we received this past week, which is, the town of Bucksport is pleased to report that it is one of 6 communities in Maine that has been awarded a technical assistance grant from the state's Maine Community Energy Redevelopment Program, MESRP. This grant is geared towards advancing the redevelopment of industrial sites in Maine by incentivizing economic development and helping the state of Maine to reach its climate and clean energy goals. Bucksport is partnering with JERA Americas, owner of the Bucksport Generation Power Plant at the former mill site, to focus on areas around the existing power plant, clean energy technology, and businesses that can utilize such energy. The town of Bucksport looks forward to partnering with JERA Americas as the town continues to reinvent itself following closure of the Verso Mill in 2014. The opportunities created through this grant for both increased clean energy and economic development are abundant and will be a win for JERA Americas, the town of Bucksport, and the state of Maine. JERA Americas acquired Bucksport Generation in December of 2022 to ensure reliability as demand for electricity continues to increase, and with a long-term goal of investing in technologies and opportunities for Bucksport that support Maine's clean energy transition. JERA Americas is actively exploring several decarbonization projects for Bucksport and wants to make sure its efforts support the economic development and energy transition goals of Bucksport and the state of Maine. JERA Americas is committed to powering the community not just by generating energy, but by building partnerships that support the people who live and work near JERA Americas power station, said Randolph Bell, JERA Americas Vice President of Government and Regulatory Affairs. The MESRP program will help deliver economic and clean energy benefits to Bucksport and the state of Maine, and we look forward to continued collaboration as we reach these shared goals. Even before, I would note that even before we received this grant, JERA had reached out to the town to start discussing potential economic development projects that they were looking to do at their site, at the former mill site, which for us is extremely good news, since it's the first tax-paying entity on that property that would be making an investment in it since the mill closed. We have MMA, which is a great addition to the community. It's not a tax-paying entity, and we have Whole Oceans, which pays its taxes, but it has an added value to that site. So this is a positive step for us, and as our economic development director would attest, I think they've been very eager to work with us. So I see that as good. As of 5 p.m. today, 879 absentee ballots had been requested from the town of Bucksport. Many of those have taken advantage of our in-person absentee balloting in the council chambers since we began that on October 15th. There is one more week to do so, and absentee balloting will end on Thursday, October 31st. Our new assessor, Justin Van Dongen, started work on Monday, October 21st. He has hit the ground running and been very busy since he started. His hours are Monday and Tuesday, 7:30 to 5:30, and Thursday from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. The assessing position in Bucksport is now a part-time position as opposed to a full-time position. It is not too soon to start thinking about what your float for the 2024 Parade of Lights will be. The event is being held on December 14th, and the parade will start at 6 p.m., and there will be a spectacular fireworks display to end the evening. As you noted from today's agenda, you accepted 2 more grants applied for by our personnel and learned of a third which partners us with a business for additional development in the community. We are very fortunate to have such dedicated employees that go above and beyond to write grants that saves the town money. And finally, I am very happy to report that the after-school care program has been taken over by the Bucksport YMCA. Thanks to RSU 25 and their employees for stepping up to bridge the gap between Bucksport Child Care Center and the Y.
Thank you, Sue. Any questions for Sue? I never get to do this anymore, so I'll second that, your commentary on the grants, because, yeah, we are very fortunate that that work takes place, so, thank you. We need, let's see, set public hearings and/or hold public hearings and approval of any licenses or permits. I'm not seeing any this evening. Discussion of items not on the agenda for council and public. We'll start with the public this evening. Mr. Chapman.
Yes, thank you. I'm Ralph Chapman from School Street, Bucksport. Relative to the landfill closure plan, which we hope to see shortly, I understand there's a period of time in which a public hearing could be requested. If I understand it correctly, it's not mandatory that there be a public hearing, but there's a period of time in which a public hearing could be requested. For one, I would recommend that the town of Bucksport request a public hearing. But let me ask the question, which is, what is the process for getting a public hearing? Is it something that would best be done by citizen requests for a public hearing, or best be done by council asking for the public hearing? Do you have any information on that matter?
Public hearings are generally granted by the department when a party indicates that they can provide significant technical or some sort of information that hasn't been part of the application, that wasn't in the application, or that contradicts something that is in the application. They're not commonly granted, but I'm not saying they wouldn't be, but they're not commonly granted in most cases. But the citizens can request them, the town can request a public hearing, but it's a very, in requesting one, you have to tell people what you think is deficient, or why a public hearing is necessary for what isn't included in the application. You know what I mean? It can't just be, we want a public hearing because it's a big deal in this area, which it is, and is valid, but it's not valid statutorily. Validity that way is evidence-based in terms of if they grant it or not, if you can.
But we gotta see the application first.
Oh, yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
Oh, but the
And then there's a
deadline-
certain time, and I don't have that on me, but there is a certain amount of time that you can request a public hearing, both during the processing and then following it, if you appeal their decision on what that document, what that permit looked like. But at the beginning, there is, I will check on
Okay, let me
the date.
at least make reference to another question, which is that which has to do with the timing. I may not be correct on this, but the time period during which a public hearing could be requested might be upon the filing date.
20 days after.
After filing?
20 days after the department has accepted it for processing.
Okay.
That's in the notice.
Oh,
That's where you
okay.
just
Yeah.
found that.
Yeah. Am I wrong?
No, you're right.
Yeah, so it sounds like, it must be received by the department in writing no later than 20 days after the application is found by the department to be complete, which it hasn't yet.
They don't even
and
have it
is
yet.
accepted for processing, so then there's like that 20-day window.
Okay, well, at the very least, I would recommend that the council pay attention to what the application looks like and whether or not the town would like to request a public hearing, irrespective of whether citizens doing the same thing might choose to request a public hearing. Good, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Anyone from the council? Rich has spoken enough tonight, I think. He must be. He usually pipes up, but I guess we're good. All right. Upcoming public hearings, designation of topics. Anything under discussion
Oh,
for the
yeah,
public?
you waiting for me?
Well, you
No, we
usually
move
turn up
on,
about
but
this.
you-
Sorry, I'm still trying to resolve issues for
No,
the
that's
public
all
at
right.
home. Sorry, I'm trying my best. Just give you a quick little update of what's going on in economic development. There are 7 outstanding grants right now. The SHIP grant, we just had a public meeting on the 22nd. 4 major goals came from that. The primary improvement goal is a wider paved walkway that is plowable and replaces the unit pavers. This path is intended to be generally at existing grade with the exception of the realigned segment over the proposed 26 Main Street Peninsula. Based on the prior winter's flooding, which was around a 100-year FEMA BFE event, and how well the shorefront held up other than the floating docks being relocated and the unit paver walkway being impacted in several low-lying areas, the general input from the public and the most economical near-term improvement would be to allow the waterfront to continue to flood as it did this past winter if another comparable storm event occurs between now and 2050. Number 2, from 2050 to 2100, we would recommend an elevated walkway levee system with either fill behind to tie into adjacent upland grade or a wall at the back of the walkway to accommodate adjacent parking lots and building existing grades. This would require some level of stormwater pumping to handle precipitation waters collecting behind the elevated walkway areas with at-grade facilities left at existing grade behind the walkway and wall. Item number 3, suggested planning for adaptation of lower level buildings and structures like the pier and propane tanks by elevating them or relocation to nearby upgradient locations as practical. And number 4, new site improvements regardless of coastal hazard risks, including parking and park space improvements at the west end of the project over the existing railroad tracks and at Steamboat Lane. Additionally, minor site amenity improvements would include new electrical improvements, service and updates to site lighting, storm drains, sewer manhole covers, etc., make them more flood-proof. So the plan, this was a draft master plan. This plan will be coming to you at your meeting in December. We will close out that grant with approval December 31st. Grant number 2, the Community Resilience Partnership. The grant due to the state by December 17th. There were 2 major items that the grant was looking at. Unfortunately, one we found out cannot be covered by this grant. And number 2, the communication system, the council's approved that, resolved to fund it. So we don't have anything to bring forward to the council for that grant at this point. Grant number 3, the MPI for Central Street, was supposed to be completed to have those last man covers. Thibodeau's, who also got the town's plowing, the town paving project, was gonna do when they were paving. And I don't know, I'm hearing that this is not gonna happen this year, it's gonna happen next year, so this project's not gonna close until those manholes are adjusted. So once they get to that, we'll close out that grant. So we've got 3 on their way out. Grant number 4 is the MPI US Route 1 walls. Those will happen in the springtime. Grant number 5, the CDS. Federal government asked me to slow down. I'm ahead of them right now, so we're doing good there. They're doing their environmental studies. Grant number 6, the VPI. The MDOT reached out to Susan and I, and they're going to get back together with us in January and February for the engineering phase. And grant number 7, the CDBG for Penquist with the Knoxview Apartments. All of the legal documents you folks signed at that meeting a couple meetings ago have been sent and have signed off, and they're simply waiting on some paperwork from Penquist, which was their budget. So we are looking good there. Marketing going on for the town. The 2 Less Make a Right commercial in conjunction with Fort Knox has been on WABI, we just switched who was airing the commercial. We also got a free spot during the Discover segment on WABI. It was also when they were doing tree orgies, and in that spot I highlighted some of the events that were going to be happening for the rest of the year in Bucksport. Ghostport was a hit, a lot of involvement, a lot of events, and we want to thank the village. They've improved over each year by adding different and more events for families. Justin McKinney, the comedian, will be coming to BPAC November 9th at 7:30 p.m. You can get your tickets online. Small Business Saturday is November 30th this year. And the 9th Annual Holiday Lights Parade, as Susan has mentioned, is December 14th at 6 p.m. One new thing that came up with Wednesdays on Main, In the Whale, true story, is going to be coming on, put on by, like I said, Wednesdays on Main on November 7th at the Alamo Theater.
Can you elaborate on the paving issue a little bit more with the manhole covers, why that isn't done, or isn't going to be?
They were going to do it all at the same time. I will reach out to them and see if they will come. They should fix it because it's two different projects, but their plan was they were supposed to pave certain roads in the downtown area. They were going to do it all at the same time. I just got word about this morning.
They were supposed to have done paving by the end of September.
Yeah.
Although paving plants can stay open, the later that you have it paved, the less chance it's going to survive the next winter because it doesn't have enough time to harden and settle. And I spoke with our public works director, I think it was the beginning of this week, and said, where's the paving? And I said, then we're not doing it this year. It's the end of October. If you pave in the next 2 weeks, it's still not enough time before we start to have freeze that it will be plowing it up.
Yep.
So I said, you'll have to do it in the spring. I didn't realize it associated, but that was my decision. They're contractually, it was supposed to have had it done by the end of September.
Why wasn't it done? I understand now why wait till spring, but why are we at this point?
Since
We
they-
get really good prices from them, but virtually every year we're after they've done all their big contracts.
So do we
and
have to
this
put it
year,
out to bid again, or?
We put it out to bid every year.
Okay.
They get very good pricing and they do good work. I'm not suggesting that they don't. I just said that in this instance, it's the end of October.
Yeah.
It's too late for major paving.
That's a good decision, I agree.
You know, if we were gonna do a driveway, maybe,
Right.
not miles of road that I don't wanna touch again for 6 years.
Yeah.
That's,
They were rushing to get the shoulder done on the way to Ellsworth yesterday. You can tell they were trying to get that paved.
Oh, absolutely. And it might have been a message that was lost in translation, thinking that they weren't going to do that. Like I said, I just found out today. I thought it was going to be
well,
done.
I didn't realize one was tied to the other. When I had the conversation with Jay, or I would have had a conversation with you saying, I apologize, I
No.
screwed up your schedule, but we're not doing it now.
But next spring, are they gonna do this year's project?
Yes.
And then in the fall, be like, well, we were there in the spring, we're gonna do that. Next year's the year after. Is this gonna be a ripple?
I don't think so. I think once upon a time, we granted the contracts early and we got done early. We were done by June. And then we did the contract in July and it's been within spitting distance, excuse my language, of the end of September most years when it's gotten done, and now it's a month beyond that, and that just seemed excessive. No, but this isn't a punishment to them. This is protection of the if we're gonna spend $250,000 to pave something, I don't want it to be last less time than it should have because it didn't have time to cure after it was.
Right, absolutely.
No, that part, I'm 100% on board
But
with.
the-
It's just a little
Getting
irritating
them-
of why we're here.
We're here because they didn't come.
So.
Which is there.
So now do we set a deadline that says this is when you're gonna have this done by?
We had that deadline, which was September 29th, and we,
Right.
or the end of September.
So do we do that now for June potentially? Like, how does that work?
Well, I think we may have made a point,
Mm.
Yeah.
because it's supposed to happen in the spring after that, which is fine and doesn't impact the ability for us to do it again in the fall. It's, you know, it's two different budgets,
Right.
but it didn't ask the council before I made this decision because it felt like it was,
It's the right decision.
Yeah,
It
that's
was-
right, yeah. It's
I needed
absolutely
to-
the right thing to do, yeah.
and truthfully, it got away from me when I said I was talking to Jay, I said, what up? And he said, we've been after them and they do what everybody does, which is book themselves
Yes.
right out straight, but some years you can use weather as a excuse, but that wouldn't be this year, 'cause
Right.
we didn't, once we got beyond the early monsoons, we didn't, you know, we weren't, the summer wasn't
Yeah.
a terribly rainy event, but as I said, they do very good work. They give us very good pricing. You know, I think they see us as a reliable customer because they do that, but,
Do we see them as a reliable vendor?
well, they've always made it till this year, and they didn't make it.
And they technically finished Central Street $60-something thousand under budget
That's-
and early. It's just, we wanted the manholes, they had another project,
Yep.
gonna do it at that time to save on resources. And like, there was just, like I said, I just got caught off guard, I didn't know it.
It was the same vendor that, as and he's right, between what the town crew did, saved us $70,000 on that project on Central Street. So,
Just-
and they were on it right away, I mean, it was, but that one was supposed to have been done the prior fall and didn't get done, so it got done first thing in the spring. That was a state project. Anyway.
I just have a quick question about Penquest. When's the decision for that grant come down? Do you know the
It's all
timeline for
done.
that?
Yeah, we're just waiting on the final
the
contract
final
part,
contract, I
yeah.
mean, yeah.
She messaged, she's keeping me in the loops with, Peter, and they've been going back and forth. There was people out and what, the council is way ahead of the game, so I appreciate you all. We are good. They're being held to the fire. And just a couple points of, we've had some more vandalism up at the Ian Playground, skate park baseball field. The door to the concession stand was broken. A new door has been ordered. A report's been filed with PD, and we've had excessive damage and graffiti underneath the Dr. Tagan Bridge. Please, if you see something, say something. I don't get to all parts of the waterfront or the playground every day, so it'll help when we review the cameras to give a better and more consistent timeline for PD and dispatch, so that way we can hold those accountable, because that new door is just slightly under $400, and that was after going through multiple vendors and reaching out to Hammond Lumber, who did good for us. So that door is $398.75. So please, if anyone sees anything, just say something, call dispatch, call the town office. We can't continue to have this happening because it's taking resources and spending money that could be used elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Rich. All good on discussion done on the agenda. All right. Upcoming public hearings, designation of topics for committee assignment and scheduling of committee meetings. Do we have any committee meetings that need to be scheduled?
Infrastructure. And,
We need to talk
we're
about-
having one meeting in November, as usual, which will be on the 14th. Is that everybody, otherwise we're meeting the day before, or meeting on Thanksgiving.
Right, could be the thing.
We usually do,
Just the
usually
one.
do just the one in November and one in December for the same reason, but
So
four-
infrastructure.
The 14th at 6 o'clock.
Yep.
Oh, that's a doozy of a day.
6 o'clock on the 14th?
Yes. And that's to discuss the facilities that I did not have ready for you today.
Any other committee meetings?
Economic development will be on the 12th.
Thank you. Okay, thank you. All right, the next item is an executive session pursuant to MRS Title I, Section 405, 6A1. The council will not be taking any action after that meeting, or coming out of that meeting, other than to adjourn, so.
So moved.
Second. Questions? All in favor? Opposed? Thank you.